If Kalam could say to me, "Raw, no, we don't actually have that," then I might be a little bit less adverse, even though I look into things just to know people's thing. But I would actually look into Ma'at and Metu Necha and all of that stuff, not thinking that or maybe I have to have my backup, or you know what I'm saying?
Going to it with an open mind.
And I'm saying generally speaking, Muslims would have a better view of it in general as well, because even though we have something spiritual, that doesn't necessitate that all our worldly affairs are like have been set in stone for us. So you can still learn from civilizations. You know what I'm saying?
Do you know what I think you should do? I think you should flip it. I think you should flip it then and do it the opposite way. Whereas you should actually go in and learn, go with an open mind like my brother said, and go in and learn, and then you would make the decision. You then go, hold on, actually this doesn't conflict, because it's like, if I've been studying English, when I'm going to English class, now that it's time for science, I don't go, hold on, is this science lesson now going to mess up what I was learning? Nah, you still go in there and learn and go, okay.
That's right. So, cool. But that's exactly.
I say dawah.
What does dawah mean again?
Dawah, cool to invite.
Dawah. No, it literally means same thing. Dawah.
I was going to ask you, and you probably mentioned this earlier. Everybody has a beginning story. Is there a beginning story for you guys? How the human race was created, the world as we know it?
There's only mythological ones.
So within Kemet, they don't really know or have a story how the earth, trees, things came about.
You do have something regarding like
mythological. It's one of the larger characters.
regarding the waters and
yeah, that's why I want to know. Do they have that belief?
There is myth. It's all in myth.
So chat to us about that.
But the myth is the myth fact or
about the waters and
within
stuff.
ancient Greece, myth was like the story that could be taken seriously. So within Egypt,
so the myth is a fictitious story that tells the truth.
Oh, what? Fictitious story that tells the truth.
Yeah, so woven into it.
It's a parable again. You're trying to say
like the tortoise and the hare. It's fictitious. Tortoise and hare don't race each other, but it tells a moral truth.
So what was the story for the creation of humans within Kemet?
There was various different stories for the creations of humans.
Was there someone or some group of things responsible, or was it accidental?
So there is various different creation myths.
Yeah.
So where we have to understand they're myths, they're stories, they're not
to you they are.
That's just what they are. That's just what they are.
Boy,
you can't be telling. Okay,
you can't say there's an Adam and Eve. There is an Adam and Eve.
For example, the sun cried. Does the sun?
No, that's mad. Yeah.
The sun cried, and then the tears dropped on earth, and then human beings were created. It's a myth. Human beings were created from a potter's clay. You had Khnum there holding up the clay, and then human beings were created. It's a myth. Anybody that believes that to be literally true is gone past psychiatric help.
So basically,
I say they need psychiatric help, bro.
So then basically you're saying then, because of all those myths, you within your philosophy or belief system, you don't know how humans were created.
So
since all of those things, as you said, are just myths, they're fictitious.
Yeah.
You don't really know.
No, it's not that we don't really know. There is a study called anthropology that tries to find, not anthropology, what's the science? Is it anthropology? No, it's anthropology to find out how human beings came about. So we can study that to find out how.
Yeah, but we're saying within the system as well.
You subscribe to anthropology?
I subscribe to science.
Oh, I see. That's interesting, because not all belief systems would subscribe to anthropology.
It's not.
Okay.
Kemetic philosophy does not deal with beliefs.
Which
a philosophy, remember? Philosophy, natural science and philosophy. Natural science.
What word would you use?
Which is why we're saying the burial process conflicts them, because there's an element of belief when the Egyptians buried themselves. When we observe,
For example, we have a day of standing, the resurrection day, right?
Right.
People be like, "Bro, what do you mean you have a resurrection day? Isn't that a belief system?" No. What they literally did, was have a sarcophagus. They will bring it along. They will raise it into the living perpendicular, and then they will have the deity Osiris, let's say for example, and all of the judges. But guess who they are? The human beings that was here wearing amulets, for example, to say I represent that principle on earth, right? And let us judge whether this human being, was actually meaning true or not.
People that knew.
What he lived on, was it righteousness? The people was all there, let's say, who came along with the funeral, to be like, listen,
and you knew that they were trustworthy via.
has anybody got anything against this person?
Okay.
That's it.
Did he do wrong against you? If he did wrong against you, then boy, you may not be able to have a proper burial.
And his name will not.
And you will not get to live on.
Okay.
But if they all say, this person was true, then you're judged righteously, and then you get your nice burial and everything else, and your pension now goes on to your children.
But again, that's only the notables, though. That's not necessarily the lower class or working class.
It depends on what time frame you're talking about.
Right. Okay.
And the lower class did have their own mummies and tombs and all the things there as well. It did
So we know
become
what those
widespread.
rituals meant, but we don't know what they were saying with the creation stories necessarily.
No, we do know. Well,
He said that there are a number. Yes, there are different accounts.
How do we interpret, let's say, the most popular one?
So, for example, let's say the tear from the sun and so forth, right? Like, it's basically telling us that we all have the aspect of divinity inside of us. We all have a dual nature within inside of us. Meaning, when you cry or when tears drop from your eyes, you can cry for two reasons, right? Out of happiness or out of sadness. We have that within inside of us. We have those, I don't want to say conflicting natures, but
Dual nature.
dualistic natures within inside of us. We have the capacity and abilities and potentiality as what they describe as the supreme, let's use God for now. We have that capacity within inside of us. We have the ability to create, procreate, and all these things.
But we don't know who gave us that capacity, though.
We have the
You don't
ability
know.
to. What do you mean?
You don't know who gave us that capacity.
Well, the universe gave it to us.
And who was responsible for the universe?
And behind the universe is these divine principles.
Right.
Makes sense? So, for example,
that's where you hit roadblock, bro.
Let me make sense for you, right? You have the sun, that is a physical, mundane thing. I say mundane. It's a physical thing that's inside. But now, by utilizing philosophy, we can now speculate off the characteristics that it has inside of it.
Right.
And now we can now say that's a principle of such and such.
I think what, for example, with Muslims asking, and what I'm asking specifically speaking, is you say you have the sun. Yeah, I'm more concerned with how did we have the sun? How did the sun come into being? And so I'm saying, for me, if you say to me, that Kemeticism doesn't deal with that. It's easier to palate that you're saying it's not a belief system. But if you are saying that Kemeticism does take that into consideration and has answers for it, then it's hard for me to separate that from a belief system.
From a Kemetic standpoint, we'll tell you, if you want to find out how the sun came into existence, go and study astronomy. What's the one? Astrophysics and so forth. That is how you get to know how it came into existence.
Astrophysics.
Yeah, because we're dealing with science.
But astrophysics is not going to explain. Astrophysics is just going to explain to me. I'm assuming
physical
it's
world into existence.
Oh wait, so astrophysics deals with
Big Bang
from
Theory.
what past Big Bang Theory or prior to the Big Bang Theory?
They speculate prior to the.
There are models.
Because I know about creation of stars and supernovas and what the star consists of. That's not the point. What I'm trying to see is, does Kemeticism deal with bam? Yeah.
So
I think it's a roadblock, but it's actually intellectual honesty. It doesn't.
That's fine. That's what.
But you see, it's been then in the realm of the atheists who say the same thing with astrophysicism.
Agnosticism. I would say it's more. I say it's closer to agnosticism rather than
atheism is a firm rejection of God.
No. He said agnosticism.
Means you don't know.
Maybe I'm slower than you guys. Explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Agnosticism, will that not deal with spirituality though? Will they not deal with spirituality?
Well, they would be unsure that there's a creator, but they're not. For example, Buddhists would say that, we're not really concerned about how. Or whether there is a God, we're just concerned about how we live in. That's not a negation of a deity or a theos. It's just a thing of we're not concerned with that.
So they're not neglecting this.
No, that's not the point. What I'm saying is, for example, Kalam, as it is framed to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, is saying I can be a Muslim, and still adhere to the Kemetic principles, right? Which wouldn't be possible, if Kemetic philosophy overlapped Ma'at, with Islamic theology. They're two different things, which is why I come back to my example of it was good when you said, when you come from English, you don't go to science, think about English. The fact is, you man are presented, Kemeticism in line with Islam as though it's English, Spanish and French, linguistics. Not that it's a completely different topic, which is why I'm trying to get down to the bottom of it. And even as I'm talking to you, I get the bulk of what you're saying, but there's still a few kinks in the thing where I've got to go back to the drawing board and see. You
just want to know whether there's a supreme deity.
Yes.
No.
I would say this, right?
I want to know if the Egyptians actually, all of them, or whether there was a class of them who actually worshipped Anubis as Anubis and believed that his heart was going to be weighed on the scale. Because I'm saying, I know, and if we were to speak about African spirituality, if we're speaking about African spirituality, and I would say my family in Ghana are not of this spiritual class. They literally, worship Nyame, as the God. And I'm saying if all these spiritual systems trace themselves back to Egypt, then it's highly likely people in Egypt felt the same way. These divine principles, Busum, whatever, they were actually things people worship and serve and pray and bow and offer sacrifices to.
Because
over the years, anything to do with belief.
Fair enough. Cult in ancient Rome. And ISIS came from where? Kemet. So the Romans started worshipping ISIS. Could they not have picked up that habit from Kemetans who were worshipping ISIS?
What do you mean by worshipping that?
They built temples, they bowed down, they gave...
they built temples, but what was the purpose?
They worship.
To set up to revere them, to dedicate their time to them, to venerate. It's not bowing down to, or sitting in, or meditating.
They studied under a certain
making certain principles. So for example, I don't know if this happened, but you know how you got some people that are like dedicated to like anarchy, so that they sit in they get like their whole group and they're dedicated to that. They almost worship the principle of anarchy and chaos. I'm trying to figure out, where there's such people in Kemet that maybe worships the principle of love, and they abandoned all other parts of Ma'at and that.
You've been given in good faith from the perspective of the priestly class.
Yes.
Now, what the people did with that information, and then what the ruling classes did once they saw the effect it had on those people was a different.
It's a different thing. Yeah. I think we just want to encompass the whole thing, because yes, like I'm saying, the thing is, the scholarly classes in civilization generally tend to be the smaller in number. Of course. And when it comes to spiritual systems, generally what happens is
they were generally the only ones reading at that point.
Right. As generations go on, people forget, and this Islamically we've been saying this for yonks, which is why I'm saying clarification goes a long way. If there is like a preserved reading and writing of things of this spiritual, or I don't even want to call it spiritual system, of these school systems and mystery school systems, if there's clearly etched into history, say to show it's only about principles, then I feel like you minimize the amount of people who take these things literally after.
So I don't have any knowledge of those who did take it literally. We don't have enough evidence to say of the lay people if they truly said we believe this.
That's right.
But the principles of Ma'at is anti-belief.
But the Western convention is to believe that they believed it all literally, and that they were worshipping.
Well, the West. I don't believe the West were. I don't believe the West were really. I don't believe the West were particularly concerned with how they were worshipped. They were just. I believe it was just a pursuit. Maybe
I watched too much Stargate.
The mummy. Just look at the mummy, and Imhotep believes it.
That the normal person literally believed that the Egyptians believed that these hawk-headed deities were being worshipped as human beings, or whatever the case is, or divine beings, or whatever the case is. But in Kemet, it was never the case. For what we can attest of the scholarly class.
Right. Have
Can't tell you about the rest. About
that's
the rest
fine.
of people.
Have the Eurocentric archaeologists who've gone to Egypt, have they presented any sort of evidence or sites which suggest otherwise? That not the maybe not the scholarly class, but even from the scholarly class down to the layman, is there any evidence whatsoever via hieroglyphics or what have you that the people did actually worship these? Can we see in the hieroglyphics? Can we see people prostrating to Anubis? Can we see people prostrating to Ra? Can we see that?
Yes.
Right, so how, so then it could be possibly translated, yeah, by the people who've seen it, that the people actually literally were in servitude
That
to
wasn't
these.
their way of life. That wasn't their way of
I
life.
see what you're saying.
So if you have that hieroglyph of Osiris and there's someone there prostrating,
Yeah, it's conceivable that the people seeing that would be like, oh, maybe that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And then we worship.
And let me be. That's just gonna open up another because I want to
Yeah.
be frank with you guys, yeah. But it's gonna open.
Maybe
up
people are not ready for the truth all the time, innit? So maybe we hold it off to another time.
Yeah. Conversations too.
I remember on one of your live streams, you showed a hieroglyph where there was someone who was like prostrating on one knee, and they were doing that or something.
They don't do that.
Trolling.
Didn't the Egyptians have on the wall of things that would be to come in the future, like in terms of their depictions and so on and so forth?
Well, that prophecy.
Yeah,
There are written.
like they knew slavery was coming.
Well, I would say they was indulged in it.
This, right? It's,
Something like that, actually. Yeah, if you go into the book of.
Was it not?
Hermetica? Is it Hermetica? Yeah, one of the last books of Hermetica. There is some prophecies.
Yeah, and
talk
they
about-
dealt with
you talk
cause
about-
and effect, so they knew that if you do this, then this will happen.
Yeah.
So are we talking about slavery on a you're saying on a transatlantic slave trade level, or are we saying are we saying that there was no servitude within Egypt itself?
But there was servitude.
Right. Yeah. So because when you say they were talking about slavery, it sounded as if they didn't have it in their own community.
No, but they knew how a society could fall victim to slavery based upon if they fell away from their principles.
someone built those.
But
Right. Okay.
How does slavery and servitude work with the philosophy of being balanced? How can you be balanced if you're keeping someone in oppression?
Keeping someone in depression.
Are you saying people being enslaved were not oppressed?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so how does that work with the Kemetic?
They were probably telling them something like
No, he's thinking the
they
high
could
priest held
contribute
slaves.
towards
That's what he's thinking.
the building of the.
Or maybe they were teaching their citizens to be that you are in authority of slaves amongst you, and you have to treat them good and just. And by that way you pass them up.
No, it was true that the servants or slaves, whatever you want to call them, they were integrated into the society after however long it was. They were free, like normal free people.
Because Nubia had to keep giving their slaves, and eventually they said sod this, and then that's how the 25th dynasty started, because they fought against Egypt, because they used to have to give tribute, and some of the tribute was slaves from their people, and then eventually they said, we ain't doing this no more. They waged war, defeated the north, and then you had the 25th dynasty. That's when you have Shabaka, Tarhaka, Yankee.
I'll have to go into that and figure out what was the reason.
So I'm curious now, because it got brought up by Issa with the whole slavery thing. I'm curious to see how that works with the philosophy and the balance.
Yeah.
How you as a person can be balanced if you're exploiting someone, basically.
But
unless you're saying slavery and servitude was not exploitative in Kemet.
It was okay.
To some extent,
It would have to. It would have to be.
Yeah.
It would have to
wait,
be.
Kalam.
Slaves come from war. If you're at war with another country, county, wherever it may be.
There's different forms of servitude as well. So there's servitude in the sense that I'm poor and I kind of sell myself in servitude to you for a certain
I was going to mention that. Yeah, that happened in Rome.
That's not what I'm talking about.
So I'm saying there's different forms of servitude. There is the other forms of slavery that did take place where you conquer a nation and then you
bring
take
them in.
a group of those people, you bring them in.
Did they have a caste system?
Not that I am familiar with. I would have to go in and do some research on it, but I'm not that familiar with it. But I do know that they did have them in as servants or slaves, or whatever the case is. And after a certain period of time, they were able to do exactly the same thing as everybody else.
So they were like,
and they even mixed in with the people, and obviously.
So they were manumitted and integrated. Then you said, after a while.
No, they didn't have Mukataba there. We don't know that for sure.
I think there's an exhibit of never before, of Egyptian artifacts never before seen in the UK going on now, if I'm not mistaken.
Where
the
was
British
it?
Museum.
Oh, the museum.
They recently loaned them from.
Give us our artifacts back. Give us our
Oh yeah,
artifacts.
slavery is that's a very interesting topic.
Because I want to see how it works with being balanced. If you're owning people.
You see, the Muslim is the only one without the issue here on that one.
You mean the Muslim enslaved
No, you're
people
talking
No,
about.
I'm saying that. Listen to what I'm saying. He was gunning at him, about slavery, and I'm saying it's only the Muslim that doesn't really have an issue there. Cause I'm not gunning at him.
Okay.
I know, that's why he was quiet.
Like funeral, or maybe you didn't say it. I'm aware of Ghana having like very elaborate funeral rituals, like in the sense that they have like decorated
Tents
caskets
and
what have you, and they would often have them
On
built
display.
to reflect like the interest of the person who had died.
Yeah.
Is it possible that there's a link somehow?
Well, that was the question that I was asking, because that there is a narrative amongst the Akan that they migrated from Egypt. So it would seem strange to me that if you did come from a place, that you would completely abandon the customs that you had from that place, right? Which is why I'm saying as well, and it was something that my dad put to me. And it was like, when he was watching some documentaries about Egypt and the way they buried, he was saying, literally a decade ago, we were literally indulging in the same practices. So
What specifically?
in the position where I'm saying people would get buried with their slaves and their wealth and what have you, so they could go into, and the belief was that they would go into the afterlife.
And he was buried in a casket that was the shape of a fish. Honestly, it's stuff.
But as he says, these were all materialistic things, because you only live on in the world. There is no.
But my point was to say that if there's a correlation with like burial practices of burial, then is there a relationship with the worship practices as well? Because I would argue, even though some people would argue no, it's a scholarly thing.
Interpretation.
But I'll say again, the account that was given, it doesn't account for probably how the layperson interpreted it.
Yeah, it doesn't. So then again, the question would be: did the lay people engage in worship the same way the modern day Akan man engages in that, or whichever tribe?
Can you give us an example? What do they do?
So, okay, for example, what we call comfort, they are. Have you heard of? You must know about a Konfonochi, right? He's the person who was the shaman. What they translate the shaman who established Kumasi. There was one place called Kumasi, another place called Kumagu, where he planted 2 plants or whatever, and one thrived and another one didn't, and so the Ashanti people went. So, in terms of worship, I know that these people would come to shamans, for example. I'm using shaman in term loose. Don't want to say the J word, innit? So, and they would come and they would offer sacrifices up to specific gods for their certain desires. So for me, this is one of the things about worship. Like, for example, Islamically speaking, sacrificing and mentioning the name of a deity or some force or whatever, it would be shirk anyway, but that is a form of worship. And I know that my people do that. Right? So, and I also know, for example, they call upon the ancestors at times of like baptismal times, rites and that, when they're getting married and when they die as well. And they do all sorts of things regarding libation and leaving food out for the ancestors. So for me, I interpret that, and I've spoken to my parents and my wider family, and they also consider those things part of worship, even though a bulk of them would they call themselves Christians or whatever. But they just say, but these are our ancestral rites that we do, da 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 da. So my point would be, as they believed in these things like that, and then again, like I'm saying, certain chiefs would have to go through with their with their property and whatever. How likely is it that something like that was going on in Kemet or other places?
I would say that there's a possibility that later generations may have lost the
essence of the message,
essence of what was going on. So, for example, sacrifices was very much needed, and mentioning the name of the divine principle was very much needed.
Right. Okay.
So, for example, let's say fertility problems.
Right.
You're having fertility problems. You bring your missus, whatever the case is. You go to the priest, the shaman, or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
You have to offer up a sacrifice
Right.
for them to give you a potion, for example, to get you to conceive.
Yeah.
Now, the point of that is this. Because it's so divorced, you don't understand what's going on. That was the monetary system. You think what I'm saying? If you had like a lamb or a sheep or a bird, whatever it is.
So pay up, basically.
Pay up.
Right.
That was the monetary system. There was no coins or whatever the case is. So your sacrifice is for the result, the desired result that you're wanting.
Right.
You think what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then you're also having to you have to glorify the principle that's giving that to you.
Okay.
You think what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like today we go to the NHS would be classified as a divine principle back in the day. That makes any sense.
Do you know what? It's weird. There's something. I saw a sign, and I want to get down to what the sign is, but it's a snake.
Yeah. We're going
called around.
I thought you were going to say you had a vision.
No.
Well, you had a vision of this.
No. Because when I saw it, I thought to myself, and it might be because I've had those conversations with you, but I thought, there's something in that that is.
Committed.
Yeah.
You're damn right.
There's something in there that's a bit mad.
You're damn right.
But
so NHS technically speaking would be the temple system. Yeah, we're going to use temple now.
Yeah.
And then you will go to the doctor, which would be the priest.
The priest, yeah.
And then you would literally, like, of course, we got technically free on the point of delivery, but we are paying our taxes for
right, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So let's just say we never had the taxation system that we have now.
Right, you'd have
We
to
would
like offer a
bring up
sacrifice.
something for it.
Right,
You have to give something from yours to get your desired result. You want your wife to be healed, to have a child. That's what's going on. And then you will sing these songs of praises and thank them and all them things.
Right. So
but today we don't really thank the doctor. We just think like, all right.
No, what do you say? Thank you, doctor. You don't say thank you for the delivery.
Some people like take it for granted. Like
That's echoed in the biblical narrative of the Essenes, who set up a school in Alexandria, and they were it's from there that they were labelled the therapeutic. So even there they were given that sort of doctor label as well. So it's interesting.
All right. So you see the sacrifice. Yeah. In my mind, the way I have it is, first off, did they sacrifice themselves, or they bought these? Like, because I know, for example, like the shaman, man will like slaughter a chicken in front of you. Like he does it himself. Yeah. I don't know if he's gonna munch it after. Yeah. No, so I'm saying
it's supposed to be. Like to the other priests, it's a payment system.
So it's supposed to be like a sustenance
even
thing.
You yourself and the missus would eat off the food.
Okay, so it's not like it's gonna be like, you know, like some of these
the videos that you see today.
Do you know what it is? I've got this impression from biblical narrations, of like the sacrifices being consumed by fire. So I don't where no one is actually indulging in eating it. It's just like, you know what I'm saying? You see in the films, in the Nigerian films, brother. Chill, and it just goes into the
You watch Nollywood.
If you go into Leviticus, you see it's a cookbook.
It's a cookbook, yeah.
It's a cookbook,
actually
man.
cooking.
They're putting these herbs, the oils, the seasoning.
That's what's chefing up,
They're cutting it a certain way, the feathers a certain way.
But once you lose the context, you just see it as something mad. That's what's going on.
Okay. Alright, you lot sounded less pagans by the bit.
Everybody else is sounding pagan.
I hear you.
Right, guys, I'm gonna.
Time as well.
Cold.